Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast Detoured Faith. My name is Madison, and I'm so excited to be filming another episode for you guys. This episode is going to be a continuance of last week's episode, going over comparison, the leech of our lives. So, just to kind of go back a little bit, last week we talked about Romans 12:3, and then we also went over Galatians 6:4. And basically, both verses are kind of saying, you know, you have to look at yourself and not, compare yourself to others, because comparing yourself to others does nothing good for you. As if you remember in my story, I tried to keep the facade up of being better than everybody, but really I wasn't. I was not just hurting myself, but my family as well. So, um, and this verse kind of hits along those same lines where, well, I'll get into it, but, we're going to continue on with this, and this will be the last kind of episode for this, and then we'll move on to something new next week. But the verse for today, if you wanted to read along with me, it's going to be from Matthew chapter 7, verse 3 and 5. And it says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." This passage to me, like the other ones about looking at yourself in the mirror before judging others. And think about all the things that you have wrong, and not, try and put a spotlight on somebody else before you can have this spotlight on yourself, and, you know, talk about all the things that's wrong with you. And I have a situation that I was faced with, basically, kind of where I was putting the, spotlight on somebody else, and trying to keep it off myself because I didn't want to face myself in the mirror. And it took me facing myself in the mirror to realize that I'm not who I say I am. I'm not as perfect as I think I am. And, you know, the person that I'm going to talk about today is my sister-in-law. And she is not here to discuss her side of things, so this is solely off me and my perception, what I felt like happened, and, she may feel differently, or she may have something else to say. I thought about having her on the podcast, but I wasn't sure how comfortable she would be with that, because it's a lot to, first of all, come on and talk to, random people, but then to add on a subject like what we went through, it might have been too much at one time. Maybe later on we can circle back to this and have her on. But for right now, it's just going to be, my side. And, you really can't get the full story unless you hear her side. So, like I said, it might be something we can circle back to. Heck, maybe she'll hear this and want to come back, for another episode for next week, and we can hash it out there. But, as far as for today goes, me and my sister-in-law have had a rocky beginning. I was one of those where I had been in the family. So we're married to two brothers. So I have a brother-in-law, and me and my husband were dating at the time that they were dating, and it was Think about a dog marking their territory. I hate to use that example, but that's just what pops into my head. I had been in that family way before she ever came into the picture. And, I I kind of took it on myself to make sure it was understood like this is my family. I've put in the time, I've put in the work, and I've built this relationship. So, don't come in and, try and take that away from me. And I think that was kind of another reason as to why I just kind of did what I did with our situation, because I didn't want anybody to think of her in any type of way, but a negative way, and just keep all the positivity and, all that on me. So I'm thinking about it as I'm talking about it. And it's crazy how that happens where you think about something and it makes you, think about, somebody else's situation, and not only the effect that you had on them, but other people around them. You know, Thinking about it, I see that maybe where I was always so negative about her kind of persuaded other people to be negative about her and towards her, and maybe didn't give her an open, honest chance to get to know her, which now is, it's kind of a bad thing. But it's also, I can't put it all on me, but I will say that I definitely was not helping the situation um, by partaking in the backstabbing and the talking behind the back and everything. But we had a rocky start. She came in. I was like, nope, not today. This is my family. This is my, these are my people. You're not welcome. And having that kind of attitude and feeling about it definitely wasn't good. Um, and then me and my boyfriend at the time had been together well over 6 years. And I was just waiting. We had already graduated high school, all the things. I was just waiting for that moment where he would propose to me and make me his wife. And I was like, man, it's been 6 years. Well, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law got together, and I think it was within maybe 2 or 3 years of being together, they got engaged. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because it's like, I've been in this relationship longer, I've been with him longer. Why hasn't he proposed to me? And da 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 da, and doing the comparison thing, and which didn't have a good it had a good outcome in the end, because the next year did end up getting proposed to. But it definitely kind of had a sour taste in my mouth towards my husband, now boyfriend at the time, that maybe he doesn't see me as wife material, and maybe I'm wasting my time, and you know just all these negative things. So not only was it a negative effect on mine and my sister-in-law's relationship, but it also was a negative effect on my boyfriend at the time, now husband, and my relationship. Probably not realizing it, or he didn't realize what was going on in my feelings, because I wasn't as expressive with my feelings as I am now. Um, but so that was like all right, strike one. You better watch yourself, because I don't I don't want you taking all this glory and whatnot from me. And then that happening, and then because me being me at the time, say something to her face and then talk behind her about her back. We ended up working together for a while, and the day came where I actually got a position that she wanted, and it was kind of managing her and some other girls. And, you know, I think that right there kind of had a negative impact because there were things that I had to talk to her about and bring to her attention that was kind of uncomfortable for me. And it's just all the things that come with a situation like that. But I want having that role, I kind of felt better than, because, here she is, she's been working here for this long and never got it. But look at me, I've been here for a short amount of time than I've been here, and I got it. And I was excited. I felt very puffed chest, but I could tell that it didn't feel good for her, because how I felt about the proposal, I imagine is how she felt about the job. Like, I've put in all this time, I've put in all these work and these hours, and for me not to get that promotion, and she's only been here for a short amount of time, that's not fair, that's not right. So fast forward to me leaving that job, and then she ended up getting the position that I had whenever I left. And still, not really talking to each other. By this time, we've already gone through, having our first babies, and, you know, being, fake in front of each other, and, acting like everything's all right. And still, I was talking behind her back and, painting a picture of her in a negative light. But I want to say, like, it wasn't just me participating. Sometimes, yes, I would initiate the conversation, but other times, other people would initiate the conversation. And that still is not an excuse for anything, but it, it's something that I shouldn't have taken a part of, but I did. And, I was so focused on trying to make myself look better that I, didn't understand and see what all she had going on at the time. And, me being negative towards her and about her definitely did not help her, what she was going through. Like I said, she's not here to defend herself or talk about things, and I don't know what she wants to talk about, what she wants brought up. So I'm going to keep it very minimal, because I don't want to, it's not my story to tell. But she was going through some things I didn't know about, and when I did find out about it later on, it broke my heart to be treating her the way that I did, and to kind of egging other people on to treat her the way that she was treated. And it I feel like a horrible person. But besides the point, so while she was going through all these things, and not really, I mean, she told us some stuff, but she didn't tell us everything. Like, I never took the time to get to know her, to talk to her, and everything. I just wanted to start drama with her, paint her in a negative way, make myself look better, because, nobody's going to look at all my negative stuff when, you know, I'm trying to make myself look positive and do all the things and be extra, as the kids would say. I think the kids would say that nowadays. I'm not sure. But so, how we came about being how we are now, it took a lot. It's been a long time. Me and my husband have been together for 16 years, and I would say for probably, I would say probably since she got introduced to the family to, last year, like around Thanksgiving, in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, is when is when I went to her, me and my husband both, because, like I said, it wasn't just me that talked bad about her. I'm gonna drag my husband for a minute, but he also talked bad about her, um, and my brother-in-law. And, there was just different things that we talked about without them there behind their backs that, I would be crushed if I found out that somebody was saying that to me but acted a certain way to my face. And, it just, I wouldn't like that. So I'm going to tell you, my stomach was hurting so bad. I felt like I could throw up everywhere. Going the drive to their house, that felt like the longest drive ever. It felt like the road, every mile we'd go, it would just extend another couple miles. And I just was like, ugh, you know. But I just started my walk and started doing the small group and, little counseling things here and there, and, getting more in the Word and reading and realizing I need to be at war with my sister and brother, that I needed to come together with them and love them, and because Jesus and God love them, so why can't I love them? He can look past all their negative stuff that I brought to light. Why can't I? So we went to their house, we sat down, and that was a night full of we were there for a long time. It was a night full of like tears on both ends, a lot of hugging, a lot of forgiving, and I feel like it was an honest, true forgiving, because you could just feel it in the room, that like all the negative and the tension and everything that was there previously was no longer there. At least for me, I felt like it wasn't there. Um, and I felt a lot of relief after confessing to her and my brother-in-law. And I know my husband did too, which he didn't really do a whole lot of talking. I did majority of the talking, but it felt better for the both of us that we got it all out there. And I I look back at it now, and I think about whenever we first started being together versus now, and I wish that I had given her a chance then, because who only knows what kind of strong bond and relationship we would have now, what type of relationship, our kids would have towards each other. Because in the midst of being negative about her and, kind of distancing myself and not being sociable with them, I realized that I missed out a lot on my niece and my nephew's life, and they missed out on their nephews' lives. Um, because the only time we would really ever get together would be family functions, birthday, the occasional cookout at the in-laws. It wasn't like we kind of saw each other on a regular basis. And I'm gonna be honest, even now we kind of don't see each other on a regular basis, but we have made the effort to get together more now than what we had previously. We go to church together now on Sundays and do all the things, and they come over to our house and cook, and we go over there and they cook, and the kids get to play and they get to, you know, have that fellowship with one another. So it's been good all around. And I just think about all that time I wasted being negative towards her and painting her in a bad light to make myself look better. And it's not a good look. It's not a good look, Madison. And I know this probably for some people really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the verse that I read today, but for me, I felt like this story was a good example in my case. But like I've said before, everybody's situation, everybody's story, everybody's testimony, it's going to be different for different verses. So you may read this and think about your own scenario that's different from mine, and that is okay. You are so entitled to have your own opinion, your own thoughts, your own feelings towards all this. This is just my story. This is my these are my feelings. With that being said, I'm thankful that God gave my brother-in-law and sister-in-law forgiving hearts, because if they didn't, this easily could have gone the other way, where they are, mad at me and don't talk to me and don't talk to my husband anymore, which I know that would be hard on him. So it would just be difficult all around. But to sum up the verse, Matthew 7, verse 3 through 5, and kind of interline it with my example, you don't need to judge. You don't need to judge others' flaws before you turn that mirror on yourself and confront all your flaws. I had to bring to light my issues and shortcomings before I moved the light to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law to show their issues. But, I mean, really at that point, I didn't have a leg to stand on and judge them when I was doing the same things, whether it be in person or in secret. So, you know, I how could I judge them when, I have my own issues and stuff? And, you know, I just hope this message today is something that maybe convicts you to not participate in the backstabbing or, you know, talking behind somebody's back, because it does nothing but tear them, whoever you're talking about, and yourself down. It does nothing to glorify God. It's not how He says you should act towards your brother and sister, whether it's your actual brother and sister, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, your best friend, your neighbor. God tells us a certain way to act. And if we don't, I mean, it does nothing in your life, and it does nothing to glorify God. So, I'm going to end with a prayer. And I just, again, I hope that people kind of understand the comparison. I shouldn't say comparison, because that's, the how that verse in Matthew and my example kind of line up together. And like I was saying before, you may have your own, interpretation of this verse, and maybe a different story or a different example that you have in your life that kind of goes with that. Um, so I mean, everybody has their own opinion and their own story and their own testimony. So if you can put this verse towards something maybe in your life that can help you better understand it, then do it, because that's the only way you'll have an understanding of it. But I'm going to go ahead and say a prayer here and to close this out. So if you just bow your heads and fold your hands. Um, Lord, Lord Father, I just want to say thank you for all you have done and will do for us. Lord, I just pray that someone hears this message and decides to make the decision to walk away from the gossip and talking about others behind their backs. I pray they turn that negative attention from gossip into a positive conversation with you, Lord. Your words are sweet like honey and fill hearts with joy. Father, I hope everyone gets filled with your love and forgiveness today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, guys, I want to say thank you for joining me for another episode of the podcast, Detour Faith. My name is Madison, and I'll be catching y'all on the next one. Bye.